Not all teachers know about dyslexia. Not all teachers can identify signs of dyslexia. So use those words to help them understand that I feel that you are talented in this. Discuss with her that, in the first 5 minutes, we can play. Try to understand your child. Help them to identify when they might be feeling these emotions. Say, for example, that you are going to be spending 30 minutes with her. So tell her what these 30 minutes would look like. And it should not be in a way that you have decided that 30 minutes would be like this, but discuss with her that, in the first 5 minutes, we can play. For the next 10 minutes, we'll be working on this activity, the homework activity. Then again, we get a 5 minutes break, we can play or we can do anything that you like. Then again, in the next 10 minutes, this is what we do. So discuss with her, tell her what these 30 minutes would look like, come to an agreement together.
Okay.
Then it would work better. Also, there are many times that our children deliberately try to avoid, even when we are being very understanding and we try to incorporate their choice.
Exactly.
There are times when children avoid because the task might be too difficult, too challenging for them. So we need to also find out why our child is avoiding it. So try to talk to your daughter. What is it that's distracting her? What is it that she doesn't like about the task or she finds difficult that she's running away from it? Try to understand your child. I would say emotional quotient is the most important skill in 21st century for adults as well as children. It's very important from a young age that we teach our children to identify and label the emotions that they are feeling. So, we build their vocabulary about emotions, that this emotion you are feeling is joy, this is sadness, this is this, this is this. Help them to identify when they might be feeling these emotions. Help them to understand why they are feeling this emotion. Give them the vocabulary, teach them the vocabulary to express themselves, that, I am feeling joy because, I am feeling sad because, or this is something that makes me feel very happy. When we do all this for our children, we help them to have this vocabulary. They are better at understanding and expressing themselves. This leads to less frustration, because many a times what happens is children have tantrums just because they are not able to understand the situation. they are feeling a lot of emotions, but they're not able to understand why they are feeling the emotion, what emotion they are feeling. So when we give them this vocabulary to be able to express themselves, we actually make things easier for them as children, and when they grow up as adults then too. And it's very important that when our children, when they are in a state of being very confused or being overwhelmed, it's very important that we as adults, we don't join that overwhelming feeling. We should not lose control. Rather, we need to make sure that our emotions are regulated and we help them to calm down instead of joining their chaos. So our children actually learn what we model for them. Observational learning is at a maximum. We might say something but do something else. Our children will actually observe what we do. They don't pay so much of attention to our words. They pay more attention to how we behave, what we actually do in terms of actions. So the better we demonstrate that our emotions are regulated as adults, our children would also learn that. So we as adults first need to ensure that our emotions are regulated. What are the things that we are doing to ensure that we identify our emotions, we deal with that emotion, and how we are expressing that emotion in an appropriate manner? All of that together will have an impact on my child. Okay, so I would like to build a very rosy picture for you, but I also have to be realistic. So I would like to first say that teachers should be given all the information possible, but then there are times that not all teachers might be completely understanding.
Yes,
But in an ideal situation, I would say, if you feel that the teacher is actually very understanding, the teacher is proactive, and the teacher is not so judgmental, I would say that you actually need to give all the information to the teacher. Because what happens is, when we share the information with the teacher, like you said that your child is part of D-learners and he's struggling with a few concepts, when we share this with the teacher, she will be more understanding when she's giving tasks in the class. She will be giving, let's say she takes out 2 minutes extra to give individual attention to your child to ensure that your child has understood the instructions. Or she might simplify the task for the child because you've informed her that he or she is struggling with this task or this concept. So, then the teacher is in a better position to help the child instead of embarrassing the child or constantly pointing out that you are not able to do, and that might affect the child's confidence. Or the teacher, not all teachers know about dyslexia. Not all teachers can identify signs of dyslexia. So the teacher might genuinely want to help your child, but because the teacher might not be informed about dyslexia, she might not be in a position to help the child, even though she is wanting to help the child. So when you as a parent already know that my child is struggling with this, if you give that information to the teacher and you tell her, this is how this is a strategy that I am using at home and this is working for the child, then the teacher can also use that same strategy in school.
Yeah, that's the best thing I wish to have. But reality, sometimes most of the schools says actually no, they wanted the bright student to be there in their class, and then they wanted to suggest a different
children
school.
Who don't struggle make things easy for us. Because it's easiest to teach a child who is just learning while we are teaching the way we are teaching. The children who might be slow or who require different strategy to learn or who might be struggling, they pose a challenge to us. Not everyone is up to taking up that challenge. And many times what happens is, even if I'm up to taking up that challenge, I might not have the required resources or the support to be able to do that. So it completely depends on the whole culture of the school. Because see, inclusion and sensitivity, all of these things, these are actually a top-down approach. At the top, you have the school management. Then you have the teachers. Then you have the child. So the more sensitive and inclusion pro the management is going to be, that is going to get transferred to the teachers. And from the teachers, even if the teachers don't say it, from their behavior is going to get transferred to the children in their class. You can try it in little bits. Instead of giving the 100% of information and overwhelming the teacher, maybe try sharing a little bit and seeing how the teacher reacts, how it helps your child, and then slowly and gradually share more and more. This is a huge debate even in the teaching community, whether we should give rewards as reinforcements to our children or not, especially the sticker and the toffee and all of this system to reward our children. That's why we say that give them privileges in terms of activities and experiences that they enjoy, instead of giving them material things. That if your child is doing something that was expected from the child and the child does happily without any reward, for something like that, do not offer a reward, because then you take away the internal motivation of the child to engage in that activity. For an activity that the child needs to be pushed, you may attach a reward, but that reward should not be materialistic. That should be something you decide with the child. What is it that would motivate you? What is it that you enjoy? It can be an experience, maybe going to the cinema hall, maybe going cycling downstairs, maybe playing a board game with you. It could be something as tiny as that, as simple as that. It doesn't always have to be you buying a toy for the child or spending money. So rather put in your efforts in experiences that the child has for motivating them to engage in that task. Many a times as adults, what we do is we say good, well done to our children. But what is good? What was well done? We forget to give them that specific feedback. We forget to identify that specific behavior or the action or the skill that they have demonstrated. Try to be as specific as possible. Like, I really liked how you were so polite when you spoke to that child. I liked how you helped her. I'm so happy that you finished your work without me having to give you a reminder. You are so good at playing the guitar. So when you make your praise specific, it helps the child understand what they are good at or what they are doing right, what is appropriate. The more specific you get, the more the child understands what was expected or what might be their strength. So use those words to help them understand that I feel that you are talented in this. I feel that you can do this really well. So that word, this skill that they are doing, you need to actually highlight that using specific words. At the same time, when a child is not able to perform at the level that we expected, or there is room for improvement, do tell them. So when you're saying two things that are positive, you can also mention one thing that they need to improve at. Like, for example, I've taken a spelling challenge with my student, and I say that, I really like that today you were able to complete the spelling challenge on time and you got 7 words correct. We can still improve and learn this particular digraph sound so that next time we are able to get more words correct. So this way I've appreciated 2 things. I've appreciated the effort of the child, and I've also mentioned what can be improved. And for the thing about improvement, I've used the word we, that we both can do this to improve this. So the complete onus is not on the child. It is shared responsibility. So it's less overwhelming for the child. A lot depends on the kind of words that we use while communicating with the child. It's all about the words. How positively we can frame our sentences. See, the thing is that when the child is struggling in the class, that's what made the child lose the confidence. So to build that lost confidence, we need to do 2 things. One, we need to make sure that we are bridging the gap. We are giving the child the support to develop that skill to be able to do that work, and at the same time keep appreciating the effort of the child. Give them reassurance so that along with learning the skill to do that task, the child along the way is also building on the confidence. on the self-esteem. So we need to do both the things at the same time. And when something like this happens in a classroom setting, then we also need to ensure that we bring in the counselors, or we can have a sensitization session with the students in the absence of that particular student who is struggling. So what happens is we talk to the other children, that why the child might be struggling and how they can help, how they can be more understanding, how they can be more sensitive, because many a times children without realizing can be very mean. But if we help them to understand, if we tell them how they can support, how can they be a buddy to the child, how can they be a peer support to that child, they are actually willing to do that, provide that support. And when the child gets that support from the peers, it actually helps build self-esteem. It's all about the words we use. If you are going to use critical comments, then it's going to have a negative impact on the confidence of the child. Even when we want to give negative feedback, we can, put it in a positive way, that I would like you to do it this way. Instead of saying don't run, we can say can we walk. So there's a positive way to say a negative thing also. So always try to frame your sentences in a positive way, so that it's something that the child would be willing to listen, and it will not actually feel like an attack. Okay, so I would say it helps being a good listener. We don't always have to run to help our child. Sometimes wait and see how they will deal with the problem, and wait for them to ask for that help. And sometimes, just like you mentioned, walk along. You can just observe. You don't have to engage in too many words. Our children also want to be just heard. We don't always have to give them a solution. Like, there are times that I might feel overwhelmed, and I might share with someone that, this is how I'm feeling, but I do not want a solution, that this is, Kanika, this is what you should do, or this is how you should do, and then you would feel better. I just want to be heard. The same way for our children, they don't want the solution every single time. Sometimes they just want to be heard. And when we feel that somebody has listened to us, has really listened, and is not judging us, it actually makes the child feel very good, and they would come to you again then, because then they would feel that, I am not being judged, and I can come to you, I can open up to you. And they would also come and ask when they have a problem and they want a solution from you. Because what happens is, if you always jump in to teach your child or help your child, we take away the opportunity from the child to actually use their skills to solve their problems. So if we don't give them the opportunity to become their own problem solvers, then how will they develop that skill? So we need to give them that space. And when we see that, they need support, then you give that support, not when they can actually manage on their own. I wouldn't say that they aren't able to take in any of the negative feelings. What happens is, they are able to take what we teach them. So if we teach them to be closed to negative emotions, or we teach them that, if they see us reacting negatively to feedback, then they would also react the same way. If we teach them that, this is a learning opportunity because no one is perfect, then they would take it like that. So it's all about the perception and the attitude, and it comes from observing the adults in their space, not just the parents. There are many other adults in their situation. There are teachers, there are other parents, there are relatives. There are so many adults in the child's surrounding. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, parents, for listening to me, and I hope that there were some takeaways for all of you.